In this lesson, we'll look for any last-minute changes we'd like to make in order to finalize our end particles, and we'll also learn how to work with our Encache tools. So starting back on frame 1, let's go ahead and hit play and have a look at our simulation. And you can see that things look really cool, but I'd say that we can take the geo-emitter object and increase its size. We talked about this already, but right now there is a noticeable gap between our particles and the edge of the hole that they are being emitted from. So to make this look more convincing, let's go ahead and increase the size of this object just a bit more. And we could also translate it down a bit as well. Fantastic. Let's go ahead and rerun the simulation. Much better. Alright, super cool. Remember that if this gets too close to the object that we collide with, our particles might fly off all over the place, so we have to be really careful about that. But I think that this is going to work out very well. So once we have managed to finish our work on this object, we can then go ahead and hide it. So we can jump over to our channel box, go to our visibility channel here, and set that to 0. Nice. And again, it's still around. We don't want to remove it in any way. That wouldn't be a good idea, but remember, if you ever need to get back to it to make any more changes, you can just go ahead and set the visibility back to 1, and you can either increase or decrease your size, maybe lift it up or drop it down, or do whatever you need to do to make sure that you get a better look out of your particles. Alright, fantastic. I'll go ahead and set this back to 0. Alright, next what we could do is experiment with the color property on our particles, just to create something that looks a little bit more natural. So that's one property that we haven't taken a look at. Let's go ahead and jump to particle 1, and we'll press Control A to move over to our attribute editor. We'll find the color property right underneath the opacity dropdown. Here it is. So we could actually map a texture into this. Let's go ahead and do that, and we'll work with, let's say, noise. So from here we could start to adjust our threshold. That's going to brighten things up just a bit. And then we could also play around with our amplitude, maybe dropping that. I think it's a bit too high. I'd like to adjust the depth max, setting that to a value of 1 to blur the noise texture to create a softer look in our particles. And we'll also adjust the implode property as well, dropping that a bit more to add more brightness, to soften them up a bit as well. Fantastic. So from here we can go ahead and create a render, and remember, we want to do that from the camera that counts. So we'll go to our shot camera. I'll start a render and pause the video. Here it is. How cool. So we made some subtle changes to enhance the look of our particles. So let's go ahead and make sure that we do that to the second particle object. We'll just go ahead and map in a noise texture and start to adjust our settings. It doesn't have to be the same settings that we used. Maybe something close so things don't look too off. Great. And I'll also go ahead and adjust the implode property, just dropping that down a bit. Fantastic. So we might go ahead and play through this again to a point where we could see both particles, and then we'll go ahead and create another render. I'll pause the video. And there we have it. Alright, so we have managed to finalize our particles. They look really cool. Let's go ahead and close out of our render view. I'd now like to show you how to cache your particles. This is a way of baking them so we can start to scrub through our simulation and see it play back in real time. Now keep in mind that once it's cached, we can't make any changes unless we remove the cache and then start to adjust our particle properties afterwards. But let's say we go ahead and get to caching this out. I'll go ahead and double click on the range slider, by the way, to set it back to the full range. We can now grab both particles, and then we can head over to Encache and choose Create New Cache. If you'd like to learn more about these settings, by the way, I'd highly recommend you take a look at Introduction to End Dynamics. But let's go ahead and work with Create New Cache. If we were to go to the options, you can see where this is going to be stored. And we also can adjust our range. If we were to go to Edit and choose Reset Settings, you'll notice that our range is going to be according to our animation range right here on the time slider. So that's safe. And we'll also make sure that we save every frame so nothing gets changed. So this looks good. I think we're ready to create our cache file. So you can see how Maya is going to go through and create a quick bake as it starts to evaluate every frame. Fantastic. And then once we've managed to finish this, you'll notice that again we can scrub through and see our simulation in real time. So take a look at that. There they are. How fun. And we could also play this back. And now they're all moving at our frame rate. Super cool. Excellent. So we've learned how to cache our end particles. If you ever need to make any changes to your cache files, like let's say trash them, you can use delete cache. You could also merge your cache files or replace them. So really neat. Maya provides you with several options for even caching to make sure that you can start to work with your particles in a more convenient way. So guess what? That's going to be it for this section of our course. We've learned a lot about particles. We've learned how to apply effects to objects. And then we finished by learning about end dynamics and end particles and how they can be used to create some realism in our scenes very quickly, which is again really amazing. So now that we're done here, in the next section you'll learn how to shade and light your scenes to convey a sense of realism